feel comfortable now. You know, this is a big deal when you just look at the timeline of events that have occurred. You mentioned at the very top that R. Kelly was acquitted in 2008 of sexual assault, pornography charges, and then things happened in 2017. If you go back to the BuzzFeed article that came out in July of 2017 saying that he was holding women in his home that against their will. Then in 2018, there was a BBC documentary that came out exploring past allegations of sexual assault and abuse from R. Kelly. We interviewed someone in May of 2018 who said that R. Kelly knowingly gave her an STD. And then you see this docuseries come out in the beginning of the year, in January of this year, a 6-part series from Lifetime called Surviving R. Kelly, where you heard numerous allegations from women who said they were emotionally, physically, and sexually abused by R. Kelly. And then, of course, you heard from Kim Foxx shortly after that docuseries aired, the state attorney here in Cook County. You heard from her urging people to come forward if they had allegations against R. Kelly. And here we are today. But most importantly, you had Michael Avenatti come out last week and say that he's been looking into allegations since April and that he has a new tape, he said, that was over 42 minutes long, which clearly shows R. Kelly in this video having sex with an underage girl. And that in that tape, he said, R. Kelly refers to that 14-year-old's body parts as 14 years old. So there has been a lot of speculation that the walls were closing in on R. Kelly, and it appears that is what is happening today. Again, we're hearing that he was charged with aggravated criminal sexual assault, and we expect to get more details within the next few minutes as a news conference is expected to get underway here at the state attorney's office in Cook County.
Now, do you know if that video that Michael Avenatti is referencing is part of this case that we're hearing about today, or is that separate evidence that he's bringing forward?
Tanya, we would assume that it is a part of this investigation because he said that he turned this over to officials and since then has said there are other tapes that may have played a role in this. But he was very adamant about the fact that after receiving this tape and investigating it and checking its authenticity, that they needed to turn this information over to the Cook County State Attorney's Office, which is what Michael Avenatti said he did weeks ago. He said early February. It looks like there's some activity happening, maybe not. Again, though, we are waiting for the state attorney of Cook County, Kim Foxx, to address the media and give us more details about what exactly happened and how they were able to just lead up to this. Because, again, there have been so many allegations, and I think that docuseries definitely struck a nerve for her to come and have a news conference, when you think about it, and urge people to come forward.
Right.
So a lot of people are interested in hearing from her.
Sharika, during your reporting on this story, you spoke to a woman, as you mentioned earlier, who had accused R. Kelly of sexual misconduct. How significant do you think this day is for her and all those other women who have repeatedly accused him of similar conduct?
It's interesting because the first thing we do, of course, is we want to get comment from people and get their reaction. Have not been able to reach Faith Rogers. That was the woman that accused R. Kelly of knowingly giving her an STD. But she did say on her Twitter page that karma is you can fill in the blank. And then we reached out to the manager for Sparkle. Sparkle is the one who said initially back in 2001 that she believed her niece was on the first tape, or 2002, that her niece was on the first tape in which R. Kelly went to trial for. So we are trying to get information from people right now. She has no comment. But you can imagine that there are some people breathing a sigh of relief and feeling a bit vindicated. But there's so much that still has to happen with the legal process. I mean, the charges, when you look back in 2002, happened then. But the trial didn't wrap up until 2008. So this, we don't know how long this process will take, but we do know that coming from people who we've spoken to who've accused R. Kelly of sexual assault in the past, they said that they were hoping for something to change, that more people would come out, and that they would see him in handcuffs, possibly behind bars.
Now, as we've been talking about, he was acquitted in 2008, and there was similarly video during, for that case. And my understanding is that the girl in the video did not want to testify. So I'm wondering what is different this time around. Again, there's a video. Again, there's an underage girl alleged allegedly involved. What do prosecutors think will be different this go-round?
Well, I think this go-round, it's our understanding that the video is clear, that there's no doubt that that is R. Kelly in the video, and the fact that there's reference to this person being 14 years old. So I think that's what sounds, at least based on what we do know, preliminarily, that's the biggest difference. But again, we want to hear that from Kim Foxx herself, her office, and find out exactly, what information they have that led them to these charges. Excuse me, because I'm seeing a little activity off to my side here, and I just want to make sure that we are not going to miss anything. But
right, it's interesting though that all of this
still waiting.
It did follow, like you said, the docu-series that certainly brought. Oh. It appears as if the press conference may soon be starting.
So, I'm not sure if you can hear, but there is a press person addressing the media right now saying that Kim Foxx will not be taking any questions and that R. Kelly is expected to have a bond hearing. I believe she said, tomorrow. Tomorrow. So okay. That's, hold on. So they're now saying about 10 minutes until this news conference starts. So we have some time, but we will, of course, bring it to you live and bring you the latest when we know more.
All right, Jerika Duncan, thank you so much. We'll talk to you in a bit. Thanks. CBS News legal analyst Ricky Kleman is on the phone and joins me now. Hi, Ricky. It seems in many ways that this moment has been decades in the making. What is your reaction?
Well, my reaction is that I am not surprised that the charges have finally come to pass, and for two reasons. One has to do with the documentary that was aired that then created quite a national, if not international, stir about the possibility of R. Kelly being a serial sexual abuser of young women. And from that, the state's attorney in Chicago, which is Cook County, went forward and asked any victims to come forward. And the second reason is that we have heard a lot of news from Michael Avenatti, who was the lawyer for Stormy Daniels. Michael Avenatti claimed to have a tape and a whistleblower of a person, not the girl, but a person who knew and worked with R. Kelly for years, who could identify R. Kelly and the young girl who is allegedly 14 years old, in this sex tape. The sex tape that was then provided last weekend by Michael Avenatti to the state prosecutors runs about 45 minutes and allegedly shows the type of sexual acts that R. Kelly was accused of in the case that you referenced, where he was acquitted of similar charges or similar allegations in a child pornography case back in 2008. So this time, it sounds like they really have physical evidence, that is the videotape. Oh, apparently there were tapes before, and apparently before in the other trial, the jury saw them on a regular basis. But in this case, you have a whistleblower, too, who can apparently identify Mr. Kelly and this young girl.
And so, Ricky, how do you think the prosecution will approach this? And what challenges will they face?
Well, the challenge one prosecutor always faces is to look at the fact that they probably thought they had R. Kelly dead to rights back in the early 2000s for the case that eventually went to trial in 2008, and yet somehow the jury acquitted him. And one of the problems you have is that he has to know that the girl is underage. And if there is reason to believe that the girl is older, his defense, of course, is that I thought I was having sex no matter how traditional or how bizarre it may appear in terms of the sexual acts involved, but that I believed that she was a consenting adult. Apparently, in this tape, there are references to the fact of her having 14-year-old body parts, and that they mention the number of years as 14, and she calls him daddy. However, there is always the defense that that was just part of role play, and that there are people who engage in role play all the time in their sexual activities. So the real question is, was she a consenting adult in his mind and reasonably, or was she in fact a minor and he knew it?
Now, is the girl in question still a minor as far as we know, and would we need to hear her side of the story?
We're going to need to hear her side of the story, I believe. I don't think that just having the whistleblower identify the people on the tape is sufficient. At the same time, we do know that oftentimes prosecutors will spare a victim who is of tender years. I do not know the current age of this girl. I have heard or read Michael Avenatti claim that the crime is within the statute of limitations, which would make me think she is certainly not 14, but that she may not be terribly much older than that. At the same time, if she's been willing to go forward to Michael Avenatti and hire him, if that she is the client rather than the whistleblower, then I don't think there's any problem with hearing from her. It's very difficult to ever convict someone of aggravated sexual abuse without the victim testifying.
Right. Well, I think that there was some issue with that in that 2008 case. I'm not entirely familiar with it, but I believe part of what was difficult for prosecutors is that the girl in the video would not testify.
Which is why you had charges of child pornography.
Right.
And here, we don't know at the present moment if this is the only victim that is in these charges. I mean, there may be multiple victims in these charges who have been willing to come forward to the prosecutor and therefore would be willing to come forward at trial. We'll know that, I am sure, very soon.
Indeed. Ricky Kleman, thank you so much for your insight.
Thank you, Tanya.
The owner of the New England Patriots has been charged with soliciting prostitution. Police in Jupiter, Florida, say they have video of Robert Kraft paying for a sex act inside a day spa. The charges are related to a months-long trafficking investigation. Kraft lives in Palm Beach County seasonally, but is not a full-time resident there. Here is the moment police confirmed to reporters that Kraft was among several people to be charged.
That would be Mr. Robert Kraft.
Robert Kraft, the owner of the New England Patriots?
Yes, sir.
And what is he being charged with?
He's being charged with the same offenses as the others, and that is soliciting another to commit prostitution.
And how many accounts may he face?
Right now we have 2.
We now have Jim DeFede on the phone. He's an investigative reporter from our Miami station, WFOR. Jim, what have you learned about Kraft's alleged involvement?
So this case, as you mentioned, started almost 8 months ago. This was a human trafficking investigation. The State Department of Health had tipped off local police in the Martin County, Palm Beach County area that there were women who appeared to be living in these massage parlors in their counties. And so the police started an active investigation, sending undercover units in, sending in police officers with body cameras, undercover. And through the course of that investigation, they eventually raided just this past Tuesday the spa and seized a number of records, seized about $2 to $3 million in cash, as well as took a number of women into protective custody. They're not calling them prostitutes. They're saying they're victims of potential sex trafficking. This is a case that spans from South Florida all the way to China. Now, in the course of gathering the records and the course of gathering all the material that they did, they came across hundreds of names of clients who participated in this, and one of those clients turned out to be Robert Kraft, according to Jupiter Police.
Right.
As you said, he's been charged with 2 counts, 2 misdemeanors, let's be clear, 2 second-degree misdemeanors for soliciting of prostitutes.
And Jim, we should note that Kraft's team has released a statement that reads, quote, "We categorically deny that Mr. Kraft engaged in any illegal activity. Because it is a judicial matter, we will not be commenting further." And as you mentioned earlier, Kraft is among several suspects. Were officials shocked, do you think, to see his name on the list? And do we have a sense of what evidence they have beside the video?
Sure. The police chief said that he was stunned when he learned that it was Kraft's name that was among those who were being taken in. Now, we haven't received a lot of information as to the details of why they have on Mr. Kraft, other than the fact that there's video evidence of him in the facility. They also released details saying that he was taken there by his chauffeur, by his driver, on at least 2 occasions. So they must have other evidence as well. Again, this was a place that was under constant surveillance by police over the past few months, and it's during that period of time that police were surveilling the spa that Mr. Kraft supposedly went in.
Now, given Mr. Kraft's vast resources, it is safe to say that he will be able to handle this in court. But how does this type of charge usually get resolved, and will it be handled the same way for him as all those other people who've been charged?
Sure. It's a couple of interesting details to note. The police chief was asked about what the rates of the spa were. As you noted, Mr. Kraft has a great deal of resources. He's estimated to be worth about $6.6 billion. The rates that this spa was charging was approximately $59 for a half hour of service, $79 for an hour. You can make your own assessment as to the wildness of making this sort of a move on his part.
We want to take you now to Chicago, where prosecutors are discussing the sexual abuse charges against singer R. Kelly. Let's listen in.
A grand jury returned an indictment on 4 counts of aggravated criminal sexual abuse based on the victim being under the age of 17 and Robert Kelly being more than 5 years older than the victim. The second victim, initials R.L., was involved in an incident which occurred between September 26, 1998 and September 25, 2001. A grand jury returned an indictment on 2 counts of aggravated criminal sexual abuse based on the victims being under the age of 17 and Robert Kelly being more than 5 years older than that victim. The third victim, initials L.C., was involved in an incident which occurred February 18, 2003. A grand jury returned an indictment on 1 count of aggravated criminal sexual abuse based on the transmission of semen by Robert Kelly upon any part of the body of the victim for the purpose of sexual gratification during the course of an underlying felony of attempt criminal sexual assault. The fourth victim, initials JP, was involved in incidents which occurred between May 1, 2009 and January 31st, 2010. A grand jury returned an indictment on the 3 counts of aggravated criminal sexual abuse based on the victim being under the age of 17 and Robert Kelly being more than 5 years older than the victim. Aggravated criminal sexual abuse is a Class 2 felony with a sentencing range of 3 to 7 years per count. It is also probationable. We anticipate that Mr. Kelly will appear in bond court tomorrow afternoon. Thank you.
We've just been listening to the Cook County prosecutor outline some of the charges against singer R. Kelly. They are involving 4 alleged victims, several incidents ranging through many years. 4 victims were outlined with their initials. We did not get the names. Some of them were underage. The sentencing range for each charge is 3 to 7 years per count. R. Kelly is expected to appear in court tomorrow for bond sentencing. CBS News correspondent Jerika Duncan is standing by in Chicago and joins us now. Jerika, we didn't get a lot of information about the details of these alleged crimes, did we?
We did not. We got that there were 4 people, that 3 of them, this had to do with them being under the age of 17 and Kelly being more than 5 years of their age at that time. We got the dates that this happened, so now we know it wasn't just 98 to 2001, but it was, you had an incident from 98 to 1999, 1998 to 2001, 2003, and then something that happened between 2009 and 2010. So, you know, we knew coming into this, the spokesperson for the state attorney's office said that Kim Foxx would not be taking any questions, but I think the big picture here and the big story is the fact that R. Kelly was charged with criminal sexual assault. A lot of people didn't really know whether or not there was ever going to be enough to try this case again, or the possibility of trying another sexual assault case again. Well, today we found out that there was enough. We don't know if it was that tape. We know that Michael Avenatti, who turned over a tape that he says clearly shows R. Kelly having sex with an underage girl, he believes that is what will give this an opportunity to move forward and possibly a trial again. But we didn't hear that from Kim Foxx. We just heard the very bare minimum, 10 counts of criminal sexual assault, and she broke down where each count falls into as far as the alleged victim. Obviously not giving the names because these are alleged victims of sexual assault, but giving us a better sense of what that involved. 3 out of the 4, again, had to do with being underage. The third one that she mentioned, I was trying to write as quickly as I could. It said underlying felony, something about criminal sexual assault. So I'll have to go back and listen to it. But it was quick, it was fast, but it mattered.
Yeah.
R. Kelly was charged with 10 counts of criminal sexual assault. So for all of the people who have been claiming for years that this man sexually assaulted them, this is some sort of justice for them, I would imagine, and we're going to be reaching out to, many of those people that we've been in contact with. But this is only the beginning. Again, this could be a very long process, but at the very least, even though Steve Greenberg, R. Kelly's attorney, has consistently denied that R. Kelly has denied having any sort of non-consensual sex with underage girls, there apparently was enough that a grand jury said, we believe that he in fact committed these acts. So here we are again. I know I keep saying it, but it's a big day for someone like R. Kelly to be charged with criminal sexual assault after being acquitted 11 years ago.
Absolutely. Jerika Duncan in Chicago, thank you so much. Attorney Deborah Blum is also on the phone with us. Deborah, I want to ask you about the sentencing range. I was struck by the fact that he's being charged with 10 counts, and each of those counts carries a sentencing range of 3 to 7 years. So on the outside, he could be looking, if he is convicted on every count, at 70 years behind bars. I mean, of course, these also are pardonable offenses. He could get parole, but that's quite something considering, you know, where R. Kelly is today.
Absolutely. Jail is likely in this case. I have seen sex crime cases where somebody who has notoriety was sentenced on the extreme end of the sentencing range. So it is completely possible that if he goes to trial, because the prosecution will most likely not want to give him a favorable plea deal, this case could go to trial, and if it does and he loses, it is likely, in my opinion, that he will be facing significant time.
Incredible. Well, Attorney Deborah Blum, thank you so much. I wish we had more time to talk about this, but we're on to some more breaking news. We want to take you now to the Oval Office, where moments ago, President Trump met with the Chinese official leading trade talks with the U.S. Let's listen in.
But you know the nice part? There was no collusion. There was no obstruction. There was no anything. So that's the nice part. There was no phone calls, no nothing. We have I won a race. You know why I won the race? Because I was a better candidate than she was, and had nothing to do with Russia. And everybody knows it's a hoax. It's one of the greatest hoaxes ever perpetrated on this country. So I look forward to seeing the report. If it's an honest report, it will say that. If it's not an honest report, it won't. Yeah, go ahead.
You've been at this, and your teams have been at this trade deal for a long time.
Yeah, well, not a long time when you consider it's probably the biggest deal ever made.
It seems like it's getting close to the finish line. At this point, when you boil it all down, do you believe it's more likely that a deal does happen or a deal doesn't happen?
Well, I think I can speak for the United States.